This is some sort of a lens for a light. Customer states they don't make these anymore and they haven't made them for quite some time. So we are going to make 12 clear resin cast copies from this original part.
My name is Eric Strebel. I'm an industrial designer. Welcome to my channel about product design and making.
Do you ever get home with all your things, but you have nowhere to set them? So it all just ends up in an ugly, disorganized, and hard to work with pile like this, causing you unneeded stress? Well, don't let it ruin your life. Get an Alfred backpack hanger today.
This video's sponsor is Zhiyun. It's one of my new manufacturing partners. I create the CAD, I upload it, I specify the material that I want, I pick the vetted supplier that I like, kick off the project and pay, communicate with them if they have any questions, wait for the part to show up, and boom, you get something like this. Check them out for your next project. Zhiyun.io. Oh, I love saying Zhiyun. I'm going to take the lens and clean it up first. I didn't record that, apologies, but we put that on a polishing wheel and we cleaned the inside and the outside a little bit to shine it up so we could get a nice master part. Because our final parts are only going to be as good as the master part that we cast. I have a 3D printed splitter board here with a key seal all the way around it. And I am gluing down the master part with some white glue to that 3D printed splitter board. I forgot to put a little key here, and we're going to use a 6-inch piece of PVC as the mold for the outside of this part. So very simple round mold so we can be efficient with our silicone. I'm cutting a piece of freezer paper here, and this will be the liner that goes on the inside of the mold because it's quite tall and I'm concerned about pulling the silicone straight out of that 6-inch piece of PVC, and I want to make sure it comes out. So for this part, I'm going to use a Shore 30 silicone. This is Silicone Inc.'s 1120, and I'll leave a link to this stuff in the description below. Now, I'm using this softer silicone, a Shore 30, because the part is quite tall, and I'm concerned about getting the part out of the silicone. So I'm going to use something that's a little bit more flexible than I would normally use for a project like this. We'll mix it up really good and put it into the vacuum tank to degas. Enjoy. I will take the silicone out of the vacuum tank and we're going to pour it in slowly from one side so that the silicone can flow out evenly. We don't get any air bubbles trapped or anything like that. I probably have a vibration table going on here to float the bubbles to the top, and I don't mix up enough, and I have to quickly mix up another little batch to put on the top of this thing. The mold's cured overnight, and let's take it apart. We'll take the splitter board off. That's what you see at the top here, and it's able to slide right out of the 6-inch PVC and get to go back into the PVC to pour the other side. So we're going to quickly and very carefully scrape off any white glue, and you'll see at that one spot right there, the mold had come apart in a tiny little bit from the master part, and I put a little bit of white glue there to seal it up so we don't get any silicone seeping inside of the existing silicone mold. We'll mix up our second batch and put it into the vacuum tank to degas it. And then we'll pour that into the mold. I've put release agent on the existing silicone here, and we're going to pour the new silicone right down the middle. You'll see our pour sprue that has been glued in ahead of time, along with that little piece of brass, which is the vent for where the resin will vent out when we pour the final part. I pour the silicone in very slowly, and so that all the bubbles can rise to the top. You'll see on the left here, I have my dental vibration table, and that is running and allowing the air bubbles that are in the silicone from pouring to come to the top. So we have a bubble-free silicone second half of the mold. Now the cured silicone is set overnight, and we're going to remove it from the mold. It slides right out of that piece of PVC. I have a little bit of an issue taking the top half of the mold off, but eventually I get it apart. And here I'm cutting a little well area for the overflow, or what I think I'm going to need for the overflow. I end up not using it, but this would be where the resin will flow out when we pour the part. So this is the two halves of the mold, and into this mold we're going to cast BJB's WC85DF. This is a UV stable clear resin. This is what I use for almost all of the clear parts that I make. We pour that into a syringe, and then we pressure cast that into the part. Yeah, it helps if you take the little part out. And you know, stuff like this happens all the time when you're not paying attention and you have things that can go wrong or stuff that you have to change. And so I want to cover some of these issues. So here's the part. This is our first part. I pull the pour sprue out, and we use some air to help liberate the part. And they come out a lot better and easier than I thought. And that's how we take the parts out. Now in this case, the bottom of the mold got deformed a little bit, and the air actually cracks the part. And this happens because it's too thin. And so I'm going to print a little 3D printed ring, and that's going to go on the bottom of the mold and then allow the silicone to sag just a few millimeters to get the correct thickness of the part. Here we're going to do the same part again. We know exactly how much resin we need, and we pressure cast this or pressure inject this into the mold every time. And you can see I even have a little red straw here for the overfill. Make sure all the resin goes in, and you do need a reservoir because when it gets compressed inside the pressure tank, the resin will get compressed down a little bit, and so you do need some extra. We put some weights on the top to make sure that the top of the mold doesn't float or anything like that. We remove the pour sprue, and we blow some air down the middle and on the sides, and this helps us liberate the part. Yes, and there it comes out now on the sides, and we got a nice part. And you can see it's starting to get dull already from the mold from being used. We'll pour another one here. And again, pressurizing that syringe. I want to say this is like a 500 milliliter syringe, so pretty big. Allows us to easily pour the resin into the syringe and then get it into the tank. Let's liberate the pour sprue out of the inside of this. And so this is Wyatt. He's making a part here. going to use the air as well, and that part pops right out. All right, I'm pouring one more. And sometimes they're not well formed at the top. It will get a little bit of an air bubble or something. And you'll notice how the tool is tipped at an angle to allow the resin to flow out the top. So if there was any air bubbles, they would float out of the top. Let's see how this part comes out. Looks like Wyatt's taking it out of the tank. Gotta pull that pour sprue out or you'll never get the thing out. We twist it and out it pops. That looks like a good piece. So for this project, we had to make 12 final parts to deliver to the client. We probably easily made 24, if not more than that, because of the parts that failed with air bubbles at the top that didn't form correct or cracked like you saw previously. And so the mold broke down pretty quick, and we had to do a fair amount of polishing to the parts to fix them, salvage them, get the 12 parts that we needed. And this is Wyatt basically going through polishing them on the inside and the outside. We do this on the drill press with a foam pad custom cut to the diameter of the inside of the lens so that we can polish on the inside. And we're using this purple polish, this 3M purple polish. I'll leave a link to that below. We use this exclusively for our final polish, and it's fantastic stuff. Some hand sanding is involved in some of these. We had to go back maybe to 600, 800, 1,000, 2,000 grit before we polish them to get all the parts finished. A couple of things that I want to talk about are things that I would change and things that didn't go as well as planned on this project. We used this 1120 Shore 30 silicone, which I chose because I was concerned about the depth of the draw and removing the mold from the part. It has great tear strength, so there's no chance of the mold tearing, which was great, but the silicone is ultimately too soft for a clear, transparent part, and it broke down and we started getting hazing very quickly. And considering the amount of rejected parts that we got, because this is such a tough part to cast, this was not the right selection of silicone to use. We should have used a 1040, so a 40 Shore silicone, or possibly even something stiffer than that for a shiny part, like a 50 Shore silicone would have been much better. We got a lot of hazing, and that caused a lot of polishing for us and extra work. We probably had at least as many rejected parts as we did good parts, maybe even more parts that didn't fill all the way. And it took us a little while in the beginning to figure out the correct process to inject the resin into the molds, and it was just a whole bunch of extra work for us because the silicone broke down. So a stiffer silicone would have been a much better choice for this project.
Make sure you give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Make sure to hit the bell so you get notifications every time I have a new video. Don't forget to follow me on social media at Botzen Design. I'm now on Blue Sky and unfortunately still on Instagram. Rock on. Don't forget to check out the t-shirts and hoodies in the merch shelf below. Click here to check out some of the other design and making videos that I have that you might enjoy.